Hello, and welcome to my November 2023 report on the electrical systems at our property in Huntingdonshire, England. This is an outline diagram showing the components of the system, and you can find further details in the description below the video. But did you immediately spot the difference since last month? Yes, we've invested in a second Tesla Powerwall 2. The payback time for this second battery will be longer if everything else remains as it is at the moment, as we have more storage capacity than we really need for most of the time. However, this investment was made as part of our strategy in anticipation of ditching our oil boiler at some time in the future, as well as giving us a much better buffer for getting through the 17-hour peak electricity periods on the dullest days of the year. The first graph shows the electrical energy coming into the property each day from our two solar arrays and from the grid. The figures behind the graph come from the daily readings of the two solar generation meters and the electricity meter. The total solar production this month was 230 units, an average of 7.7 units per day. The lowest production was just 1.1 units on the 27th, and the highest was 15.9 on the 11th. 791 grid units were imported, with just 5 at normal rate and the rest at economy 7 low rate. The Powerwall was boosted from the grid on most nights, and the cold weather has meant that the tenant has needed both storage heaters on in the annex whenever he is in residence. The Tesla app stated that 5.7 units were exported to the grid, which was 0.6% of the total electrical energy coming in and 2.5% of the solar energy produced. The solar contribution to the month's electricity input was down to 22.5%, marginally up on November 2022's 21.9%. This second graph shows how the electrical energy reached the property in the car, either directly or via the Powerwalls. The Tesla app supplies most of these figures, and the car's home charging figures come from the My Energy app. The Tesla app misbehaved for a couple of days after the installation of the second Powerwall, doubling the measurements of grid transactions, so figures for the mark dates have been reverse calculated. Here are the graphs for the 23rd, showing that the grid energy going into the batteries was also shown as being used by the home, leading to some inflated figures. My local installer managed to get Tesla to remotely correct the issue in the gateway. 14.5% of the energy came directly from solar, and an additional 7.1% was solar coming via the Powerwalls, giving a total solar contribution to the energy used of 21.6%. Our Zappi charger put 44.8 solar and 60.9 grid units into the car, so the 233 miles driven in the month were at a cost of 2.23 pence per mile. This graph shows the energy going into and coming out of the Powerwall each day, as reported by the Tesla app. 86.1% of the energy which went into the battery came back out, a bit lower than usual, but explained by the second battery needing to be charged from a low initial state. The very small amount of energy going into the batteries on the 26th was caused by the Tesla computers turning off grid charging, apparently without human input, as a knock-on effect of the correction to the grid measurements. After nearly 3 years of manual control, by adjusting the backup reserve percentage in self-power mode at the start and end of the low-rate period every day, the extra buffer provided by the second Powerwall has allowed me to hand over control to the Tesla algorithms in time-based mode, without feeling that they'll go too far wrong. This is the self-power graph based on figures from the Tesla app, which reported that the proportion of self-power was 43.8%. But 2/3 of the energy coming via the Powerwall was imported from the grid. And here's the graph showing the solar southwest production over the years since installation. 91 units puts this November at 8th equal out of the 12 years, a little below the month's new arithmetic mean of 95.2 and the median of 93. And here is the cumulative year-to-date graph for the production from the southwest array. 2023 has dropped by 1 position to 9th place out of the 12 years for the months January to November. This graph shows the daily output of the two solar arrays for the past 365 days. the 28-day moving averages have ended up above where they were a year ago, as November 2022 was one of the 3 years where production was down in the 70s. And this is the distribution of the energy input and export for the whole of the past year. And this graph shows just the daily solar production for the same period. This final graph shows a summary of our grid activity over the years since we moved here in the summer of 2011. The grey and red lines show the number of low rate and normal rate grid units imported each month, as measured on the left-hand scale, with the grey line jumping markedly. The monthly electricity cost has, as expected, risen sharply, as shown by the yellow line on the right-hand scale, and the green line on the graph shows the monthly contribution to the feed-in tariff payments for the old Southwest Arrays production, and, again as expected, has fallen sharply for the start of winter. That's all for now, and I'll be doing a monthly report for December and a 2023 summary, which should both be out in the first half of January. Meanwhile, here are the Tesla app graphs for each day of November.